So it says that they identified with the fate of the Hebrew people. It was enticing for them to identify with the fate of the Hebrew people that was introduced to them by Christian missionaries. So he moved on to a document entitled The Proto History of Igbo Jewish Identity. Let me let him introduce it.
Let's move on from there. The Proto History of Igbo Jewish Identity, 1890 to 1970. And again, all these links are in the description. You can check me for yourself. It cuts off here, this page 41. As a generalization on a whole community by assuming that they...
It cuts off here, just page 41. First of all, where did this come from? Remember, he said, I gave all my links in the description box. I gave all my... Matter of fact, I could pull that up right now where he said that, but I ain't going to do it. But just he said that several times. I gave all my links in the description box. Where the link at? I'm going to go slow. Igbo people, slave voyages, universal geography. Both of those are universal geography. One is a PDF. Igbo Jews in Nigeria, YouTube video, 1766. Duke of Orleans map, Nehushtan, Wandering Jews of West Africa, Igbos suspected to be Jews, Spanish map, German map, John Ogilby, Tribute to the Negro, Account of Negroes, Origins of the Slave Trade, Account of the Origins of the Slave Trade, History of Jews from the Destruction of Jerusalem to Present Time on Amazon and on Google Books. And then he goes into show your support, send me some money, da 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 da. Okay, but this source, listen guys, listen to me. This source is not listed. He said it cuts off there. Let me back it up so you can hear him say that again because y'all think I'm playing. Go ahead, hold
on. The Proto History of Igbo Jewish Identity, 1890 to 1970. And again, all these links are in the description. You can check me for yourself.
It wasn't there.
It cuts off here.
It cuts off here, guys. Oh, Lord Jesus. Okay, first let me let him read this. And he's starting from page 41. He tells you it cuts off there, but you're gonna see for yourself that he cut it off there because the way the source is set up, you have to make the screenshot yourself because Google Books does not allow you to download on this in this format. And you see the ebook is $69.88. So you can read portions of it, but you're gonna have to create the screenshot. So he made the screenshot talking about it's cut off there. So let's go ahead and let him read for y'all because he want to read for y'all. Go ahead, bro.
This page 41. As a generalization on a whole community by assuming that they were a branch of the Hebrews. The most influential works among the Igbos of Nigeria, 1921, and Niger Igbos, 1938, were written by G.T. Basden, an Anglican missionary who served in the area for more than 35 years. Basden's writings institutionalized knowledge about Igbo culture and were accepted by many Igbo as the main documents defining the essence of their entire ethnic group. Basden noticed that there are certain customs which rather point to Levitic influence at a more or less remote period. This is suggested in the underlying ideas concerning sacrifice and in the practice of circumcision. The language also bears several interesting parallels with the Hebrew idiom. He also argued that the affinity between native law and the Mosaic system is remarkable, and asserted that among the Igbo a distinct recognition existed of a supreme being, Chukwu, and his enemy, the devil, Ekwensu. This view of Igbo as descendants of the lost tribes of Israel gained prominence among Igbo clergy who communicated the insight in church and was soon appropriated by the Igbo. So,
what does that mean, bro?
We have two maps. One that says they keep the Christian Sabbath.
That also says they were white. Go ahead.
One that says they are Jews.
And they're both true because the Jews were white. Go ahead.
And then we have the couple of references to them not being native to the area.
He said that. They didn't say that. The one that he pulled up, this pink one that's still behind the screen there, actually says they have no tradition of being from somewhere else, but all the tribes around them came from somewhere else. Go ahead.
Yeah, different people being in that area. And now we see another piece of research that connects them to Hebrews, their language and their law, the way they live, the belief in their God.
So because they have a belief in a supreme God, because they practice circumcision and certain words bear similarity to Hebrews, that means that they are Hebrew. Guys, pull up the link right now. Pull it up. It's in the description box. Pull up the link right now. Pull it up, pull it up, pull it up, pull it up. I'm finna read it to you. So this is what he read to you. And then he stopped here. And then he didn't read to you about various hypotheses of Igbo origins and migration patterns have been discussed by local historians. So I'm going to get into all of that. But let's go. Nefi's teaching you. Oh, hold on. I don't know why my screen's sharing. Oh, because I closed the window. Okay, so I can't close the window. Is that how that works? Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know if it happened before. That was the first time I saw it, but I don't think it happened before. But I'll make sure to be prepared. So go ahead and pull up the link, and we're gonna go up from page 41. And he did not want you to read this. He did not want you to read this, family. Again, this is how I teach my people to do research. This is how I teach you to do Bible study. This is how you protect yourself against proof texting, reading in context. Don't let somebody pull one scripture out of context and tell you it means line upon line, and they're not giving you the exact understanding of what the verse means. Don't let somebody pull a quote and tell you it's cut off here because he cut it off and then doesn't give you a link. Remember, let's go back to the video because, let's go back to the video. Let's go back to the video. He doesn't give you a link. He doesn't give you a link for it. We read through all the links. It wasn't there. So he didn't want you to read this, family. Dear Lord in heaven, please be with the hearts of people as they receive this information. Let not the God of this world blind the eyes of their minds. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. With regard to the encounter between Igbo and Judaism, if the Igbos are Jews, why wouldn't he read this for you? Why wouldn't he read this for you, people? You got to think for yourself, family. He's lying to you. He's lying to you. With regard to the encounter between the Igbo and Judaism, one must consider the recurring theme of the Hamitic hypothesis, supported by a large majority of 19th and 20th century colonial missionaries and anthropologists. What? What is the Hamitic hypothesis? The Hamitic hypothesis is the idea that all of the sons of Ham were cursed because of what he did, and that this curse means that all Black people, being the sons of Ham, were to be subject to slavery. This is an idea that Europeans propagated amongst themselves, and then they projected onto Black people to make them feel like slavery upon them was justified and ordained by God. That is the Hamitic hypothesis. If you don't believe me, look it up. But that's what it says. That's what it is, that the children of Ham were cursed. So the children of Ham, the idea that the children of Ham were cursed was supported by a large majority of 19th and 20th century colonial missionaries and anthropologists. Let's read. From Western to Southern Africa, whatever the natives' religions were, they were interpreted by Europeans according to similarities with ancient Hebrew traditions and became the object of the most contradictory European fantasies. So let's read that again. From Western to Southern Africa, whatever the natives' religions were, they were interpreted by who? By Europeans according to similarities with ancient Hebrew traditions and became the object of most contradictory European fantasies. European fantasies. The Europeans came and saw these people, and then whatever they could use to try to construct them to being related to the Jews, they then tried to do that because they had the Hamitic hypotheses in mind. They were trying to subjugate these people. And so in order to do so, they tried to justify slavery in their own minds by interpreting their religious customs with similarities against ancient Hebrews. What does that mean? Wherever they went, no matter who they saw, they said, oh, y'all Hebrews because just this, that, and the third. Y'all do this. Oh, y'all practice circumcision, so y'all must be Hebrews. These people are telling the natives that they're Hebrew. Oh, you don't believe me? Let's read on. The customs, religions, and cultures of the Igbo and Ashanti from Nigeria. So the Igbo are included in this interpretation of Europeans with similarities to ancient Hebrew traditions. He didn't want y'all to read this, fam. Did you read it, fam, before you started high-fiving this man, dude? Let's go on. The customs, religions, and cultures of the Igbo and Ashanti from Nigeria, the Maasai from Kenya and northern Tanzania, the Batutsi from Rwanda and Burundi, the Pils from Senegal and Niger basins, as well as those of the Zulu, Hottentots, and Xhosa from South Africa were compared to those of the Jews. It says that their customs, religions, and cultures were compared to those of the Jews, by whom? By the Europeans who made a fantasy about them being Jews so they could support the Hamitic hypothesis. They made it up. Let's carry on. From the beginning of the 20th century onward, a colonial discourse about Igbo religion developed as soon as government anthropologists and officers such as P. Omri Talbot, C.K. Meek, Darrell Ford, and G.I. Jones surveyed the newly occupied territories in order to identify the customary practices of their inhabitants. So basically, all of these government anthropologists, which it says up here that missionaries and anthropologists believe in the Hamitic hypothesis. So the anthropologists are people who study cities and societies. The anthropologists are coming to these newly occupied territories that are recently discovered by Europeans and trying to identify their practices by comparing them with Hebrew traditions. That's what it says. Read it 10 times if you have to. Then it says the synthesis of their works. Remember when he started reading from as generalizations on a whole. He didn't even start from the beginning of this. I don't know if you're going to read a sentence, start from the beginning of the sentence. It says the synthesis of their works characterize local features of some societies as generalizations on a whole community, by assuming that they were a quote unquote branch of the Hebrews. It says quote unquote. Why does it have it in quotations? Because they didn't literally believe that they were Hebrews. It says that they called them or compared them to the Hebrews. And we're going to see that over and over, that whenever they're mentioning them as Jews, they say that they are a type of Jews, or they were considered as Jews. They are like Jews. Why are they like Jews? Because they're going around with the Hamitic hypothesis in their mind and trying to color everybody as a Jew. Come on, family. Stop letting people deceive you. God gave you an intellect and a mind. And this guy says that he gave you sources, but he did not. But it's available online. I gave you the link. God wants you to use. Come, let us reason together, family. Reason for yourself. Use the God-given intelligence that you have been blessed with. Stop letting people perform hypnotism and overriding your thinking and thinking for you. Stop doing that. Stop it. Now we can put this sentence in its proper context. The most influential of which works? The synthesis of their works. Who is there? The anthropologists, the government anthropologists. So they wrote about their European fantasies of these people being compared to the Jews, and the most influential of them was Basden. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. The most influential works among the Igbos of Nigeria and Niger Igbos were written by G.T. Basden, an Anglican missionary. He was an Anglican missionary. Why is that important? Because colonial missionaries and anthropologists had the Hamitic hypothesis in mind. Let's go back. So he is one of these Anglican missionaries who had this hypothesis in mind. He served in the area for more than 35 years. Basden's writings institutionalized knowledge about Igbo culture and were accepted by many Igbo as the main documents defining the essence of their ethnic group. He institutionalized the writings. He came up with the Hamitic hypothesis by comparing these things and then saying, oh, you guys must be Jews. And then it says that it was accepted by them after he drafted it. Let's go on for further clarification. Basden noticed, because of his Hamitic hypothesis, that there are certain customs which rather point to the Levitic influence at a more or less remote period. This is suggested in the underlying ideas concerning sacrifice, because they sacrifice and because they have parallels with Hebrew idiom. Now here it says that he also argued that the affinity between the native law and the Mosaic system is remarkable, because he has the Hamitic hypothesis in mind. And he came up with the idea that among the Igbo, a distinct recognition existed of a supreme being. So if you have a supreme being, that means that you worship the Most High. So I guess the Greeks who worship Zeus as their supreme being, I guess they were Jews too. And of his enemy, the devil. So if you have a supreme being and you have a devil, you must be a Hebrew. This view of Igbo as descendants of the lost tribe of Israel, pay attention, gained prominence among Igbo clergy who communicated the insight in the church. And it was appropriated by, you know what cultural appropriation is? Is when you take on the identity and aspects of another culture as your own. That's what people say when they see European Americans wearing braids and hoop earrings. They're appropriating our culture. It says that they appropriated it. So let's follow again. I'm trying to take it slow. I know this video finna be long, but his video was 2 hours. So y'all got to give me some grace. Y'all got to give me some room to work this now. So it says here that Basden wrote it down. He institutionalized the knowledge. He made an institution out of it. That's what institutionalized means, right? And then it was accepted by many Igbo, not by all Igbo, but by many Igbo, as the main documents of the essence of their ethnic group. Now we're going to read some more, and it's going to tell you why they would accept what this man was saying. But then it says in this sentence here that the view of Igbo as descendants of lost tribes, why he didn't read this? Oh, he did read this, as a matter of fact. He did read this. Okay. So the view, but now it's in its proper context. The view of the Igbo as descendants of the lost tribes of Israel gained prominence among the Igbo clergy, who communicated the insight in church and was soon appropriated. So they got the idea from Basden, who was who was a missionary, an Anglican missionary with the Hamitic hypothesis in mind, who compared every culture that he came across with the Jews so that they could justify the subjugation and oppression of these Black people. And then he communicated that to them who already had priests. They already had priests and they had their own religious system. So then he tells the priests that, oh, y'all must be descended from the Jews. And then the clergy communicated that idea in church, and it was soon appropriated by the Igbo. Legends of origins, even if they widely differ throughout the Igbo area, play a fundamental role in the self-definition of Igbo societies and villages. The Aro region, remember he said he was going to talk to you about Aro Chukwu, the Aro region in extreme east and Ri region in the northwest of the Igbo area are mentioned in traditions as the cradles where Igbo culture can be found. The cradle, you know what the cradle is? Where something was born. The cradle of civilization is the Mediterranean. That's where civilization was birthed. The cradle is where? In Africa. This is what their own tradition says. It doesn't say that they came from somewhere else. Remember the source that he pulled up for you and didn't finish reading, that it said that they have no tradition of being from somewhere else. Their indigenous traditions say that they came from there. So I want you guys to go back and read all of that, because it gives you different ideas about where the people say they were from. Remember that the Europeans planted the seed in their mind that they're Jews. So it says, if we take into account the sources showing that Jewish traders and caravanners did indeed crisscross the Sahara, one can imagine how a repertoire of religious ideas about African Jews might become part of an alternative tribal history among the Igbo. An alternative to their tribal history, meaning their indigenous history did not include these elements. But let's read some more. Let's read. He didn't want you to read this. From what has been said in the preceding paragraphs, it has become clear that Igbo identity was defined by divergent cultures, dialects, interests, and aspirations. Given the extent and diversity of people involved by the term Igbo and the decentralized character of Igbo society, the loss of their own religious traditions and spiritual heritage contributed to an uncertain self-image among the Igbo people. They didn't feel, remember he himself said they're trying to anchor their history in something that is tangible. He read that for you. And now it's saying the same thing in this article. Well, this is a book, African Zion Studies in Black Judaism. The ebook is $69.98. It says here that given the extent of diversity and the decentralized character of their society, the fact that they lost their religious traditions, and their spiritual heritage, contributed to an uncertain self-image among them. This is important, people. They felt like they didn't know who they were. Does that sound familiar? At this early stage of Igbo ethnogenesis, or the beginning of their culture, the cultural elements of the Old Testament spread by Christian missionaries influenced the formation of the cultural framework upon which Igbo people could search for a shared history and perspectives. It says the Christian missionaries gave them this idea that they were Israelites. It says this early stage of the Igbo ethnogenesis, the cultural elements of the Old Testament spread by who? Spread by the Christian missionaries. The Christian missionaries influenced the formation, the beginning, the creation of the cultural framework upon which the Igbo people could search for a shared history and perspectives. Identification with the mythical fate of the Hebrew people was enticing for the non-centralized Igbo societies and cultures, which did not own a common history or a common language. Why? So it says that they identified with the fate of the Hebrew people. It was enticing for them to identify with the fate of the Hebrew people that was introduced to them by Christian missionaries. The appropriation, remember what cultural appropriation is, the appropriation of Hebrew history and the creation of a larger community by Igbo people, ostensibly out of numerous local ones, led them to a search for origins that gave them back a common past and allowed them to overthrow colonial racism's hierarchy of values. As for the Black Jews movements, which emerged in the United States in the 19th and 20th century, identification with the biblical nation of Israel assumed allegorical and metaphorical significance. The colonized Igbo believed themselves to be the oppressed Hebrews of the Bible and projected their own lives into the narratives of Israel's formative history. This is what it says. This is the source that he used. This is the source that he screenshotted and said, it's cut off right here, page 41. I'm scrolling up so y'all can see the whole thing that I went down, and I did not change my screen. This is the same screen. This is the same book, The Proto History of Igbo Jewish Identity, that he did not want you to read. And then it draws a correlation between that and the Black Jews of America. It's the same issue. They were decentralized. They had no common history. They needed a sense of identity. They compared themselves to the Jews. In their minds, they became the Jews.